Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're just about at 8:30. I'm going to go ahead and get the meeting started here. Everyone wants to find their way to their seats. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday right here at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. There's a business meeting for this group, meets right here every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30. Feel free to show up, come early, enjoy the refreshments, and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. If there's anyone that is new or visiting us from out of town that would like to introduce themselves on a first name basis so we can welcome you. Nobody this week, huh? Yep.
Hi, Elizabeth, alcoholic, first time here.
Elizabeth, welcome.
Dave, alcoholic, first time at this meeting.
Dave, welcome. Glad to have you. Go ahead.
I'm John, alcoholic.
John, welcome. Get everybody? Yeah.
Scotty, alcoholic.
Scotty, welcome. Okay, we get everybody. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and that is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. So if you're out there and you are new, if you're struggling, those are sponsors. Grab one of those people after the meeting. Grab anybody. We'll have all the group members kind of hanging out after the meeting. Always a meeting after the meeting. Feel free to join us. Are there any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? Nothing? Okay, a couple quick announcements for this group. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone that's willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put their donations in that jar on the back table, marked big book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. We also have hoodies for sale if you want to support the group that way. Again, you can see me or any home group member after the meeting if you're interested in buying a hoodie. This group has a YouTube channel called the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. We have speakers from this meeting that we put on there, speakers also from our meeting here on Saturday, which is at 6 o'clock, step discussion meeting. We get speakers from that. This group also has a Facebook page. We post, upcoming speakers and events we have going on for this group, as well as a lot of other groups in the area post, anniversaries and events that they have going on. So it's a good resource to have if you want to stay tied in with happenings throughout the area in regards to AA. And with that, I believe Jack is going to come up here. He's going to read our Just for Today prayer.
Well, my name's Jack. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Just for today, prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look well as I can. I will dress becomingly, talk slow, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And Michelle will come up and read the preamble.
Hi everybody, I'm Michelle and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And then I would like to introduce Kara.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kara, and I am an alcoholic. Hello. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Number 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Number 4, made a searching and moral inventory of ourselves. Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Number 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Number 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, made a direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now Brian will come up and finish reading.
Okay, this group has a 7 tradition. Every A group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we'll see that the basket makes its way around. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, but we do have expenses. Your contributions help us to provide many services, including the cost of food, rent, big books, CDs. This group provides a lot of literature that we bring into treatment centers. This group has a commitment that we do every Sunday night in a treatment center up in Quakertown. So if you're interested in speaking for that or becoming a part of that, again, you can see me or any group member after the meeting. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. It's the church's policy. If you could just be considerate of that as you're coming and going, just wait till you leave here. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, on loan to us from the Away Out group of Brick, New Jersey. Please help me welcome Matt.
Hi everybody, my name is Matt and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 11th, 2012. The home group that Brian was talking about is actually in my living room, so this commute is a little different than what I'm used to. I want to thank Ron and everybody here for inviting me to speak. It's always an honor to be asked to speak at Alcoholics Anonymous, and this program and these 12 steps saved my life, and so when I get asked to speak, I say yes. What a beautiful town you guys have, by the way, driving in here. It's amazing. Who knew they had so many drunks here? I guess I'll just get into it. I grew up in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, born and raised. It's a nice little beach community in the Jersey Shore. I had a wonderful family, loving parents. They're still together to this day. Nothing in my childhood that you could point to and say, like, oh, that's trauma, that explains my alcoholism. I guess it's cliche, you hear it a lot, right? But that feeling, like I didn't really fit in, like I didn't belong, or like everyone, I heard someone say one time, everyone else got the manual on how to live life, and I didn't. And so I felt this undercurrent of insecurity and fear. I was incredibly shy as a kid, and I had this horrible, horrible habit of apologizing constantly, over and over again. I felt less than, and I felt this shame and guilt for no reason. And so I'm not sure if a lot of people have that experience, but I for me, especially when I started going to school and seeing my peers and socializing, I just never really quite fit in. I did not have a lot of friends when I was a young kid. And I think really from a young age, I used to say, oh, I started drinking when I was 12, but I think I started using things alcoholically way before that. It started obviously with like food, then it moved into approval of others, being good. I think when I went through puberty and I figured some things out, I don't think I went to school for a week. I was like telling my mom that I was sick. And I think it went on like that until I finally found alcohol. I didn't really know much about it. My parents certainly weren't alcoholics, very well-adjusted, normal people. But they would have parties, and everyone seemed like they were having a good time. And at one of those parties when I was 12, my brother, who's a year younger than me, and my best friend and his brother, we got into the fridge downstairs. And I'll never forget, it was TGIF Mississippi mudslides and melon balls. And while everyone was distracted with the party in the backyard, we were slugging some of these drinks. And from the very first time, drank till blackout, fell into my parents' plans, had to get put to bed. And I woke up the next morning and I couldn't wait to do it again. And as soon as I found alcohol, it wasn't like this eureka moment at the time, but looking back, I'd found something for the very first time that made me feel like I could breathe, like I fit into my own skin, like I had this weight that was on my chest and it just got lifted off. And I'm not sure that alcohol does that for normal people, because I firmly believe that if alcohol did for everybody what it does for me, everybody would be an alcoholic. And so from the very first time I ever drank, I was hooked. And so it started off innocently enough, my friends and I, our social lives on the weekends pretty much began to revolve around whose house we were going to drink at, what parents' liquor cabinet we were going to raid that weekend, what liquor store we were going to sit in front of and try and get somebody to buy us booze. And from the jump, I drank alcoholically. I was a blackout drinker from day one. Never, ever, ever drank socially. I drank for effect, and I always overshot the mark. And I remember, it's a story that I didn't even think about for maybe 20 years until I got sober. But at one time, friends and I were kind of sitting around in the living room, and we were trying to get alcohol one night. There was 3 of us, and all we could get was a 6-pack. And I remember telling my friends, you guys have 3 each. I'm not even going to get started, because I knew that if I had 2 beers, I was going to want more. That I wasn't going to be satisfied, and there was no point in drinking if I could only have 2 beers. That's a very unusual reaction or way to drink for someone who was 13, 14 years old at that time. But from a very young age, I was absolutely, I guess the physical allergy was there from the beginning, right? And I knew enough about myself that it wasn't even worth starting. So through high school, it's partying on the weekends, and then, it slowly progresses. And it kind of turns into a daily thing where I'm drinking at lunch. We used to get to go out to lunch when I was in high school. So I'm drinking at lunch, I'm drinking before school, I'm drinking after school, I'm drinking before I do my homework. I have some hidden in my closet at my house. And my father smelled it on me one night when he came home from work, and the jig was up. It was all fun and games and normal adolescent stuff, but once he realized that I was becoming a daily drinker, that I was doing it every single day, every night before I went to bed, he clamped down on me. And I love my father, but he was very controlling. And so we had this alarm system in our house, and I'm convinced it wasn't to keep burglars out, it was to keep us in. And there's many nights where, I didn't get home in time, the alarm was on, and I had to sleep in lawn furniture in the backyard, and I got woken up with sprinklers in my face. Or my brother, who was always sneakier and better at getting away with things than me, had figured out a way to beat the alarm system and to jimmy the window open in his room. And so I would, try and wake him up and climb through that window. my father and I started to have a very contentious relationship because he's trying to control me. He sees what I am before I'm even close to being willing to admit it or to give up the one thing in my life that makes me feel better. And so we were at odds constantly, and he started breathalyzing me and drug testing me. And so it was this constant battle back and forth between us, and we did not get along when I was a kid, especially a teenager. So I think maybe the level of control that he exerted on me, combined with, the fact that I was a hard partier, but I would still, get my stuff done during the week. I was a very good student. I still managed to get into some pretty good colleges. I had really great grades and SAT scores. I was the captain of the football team. And so, fortunate for me, I was able to get into Virginia Tech, and I went there in their honors program. And once I got to college, and the leash was off, and the restrictions were over, things started to progress pretty quickly. So I joined a fraternity. My nickname was Keg. I think it was a combination of the fact that I looked like a keg and that I could drink a beer faster than Red from The Man Show. So I could literally take a beer down, bottoms up, and as fast as it would pour down my throat, I could take it. So, needless to say, college got pretty crazy pretty quickly, and within, I guess, days of arriving, I was a daily drinker. But for whatever reason, maybe it was fear, maybe it was, all these warnings that I'd gotten that I was going to fail out, or maybe it was just dumb luck that I was a good student and I still went to class. I managed in my freshman year to get a 3.8. Now this is while I was pledging a fraternity. At one of the events that we had when we were pledging, we had this thing called Big Sister Night. And so I won't tell you all the stories of the debauchery of my college drinking, but this one in particular is kind of interesting. So there was this girl, Bree, and Bree was gorgeous. I mean, she was an absolute dime. And I had a huge crush on Bree. And so we're having Big Sister Night, and I somehow, luckily, get Bree as my big sister, and I couldn't be happier about this. So this is my chance, right? So they're hazing us, and they're having us drink. And of course, I'm showing off about how much I can drink and how fast I can slug the Mad Dog 2020 that they gave us. I even finished my buddy's because he was gagging on it. About halfway through Big Sister Night, I black out. I have no recollection of what happened. The next morning, I woke up in a strange bathroom I'd never been in before, and I was in about an inch or two of water, huddled around the toilet. And I later discovered quickly after I woke up that was not water that I was laying in all night. And it came to me secondhand because this is all in a blackout, but I was throwing up in the toilet and then splashing the water from the toilet into my face to wake myself up. And needless to say, nothing happened with Bree. I did not get it. I blew that chance. My sophomore year of college, I moved off campus with a bunch of my fraternity brothers, and that's when the wheels really came off. So I had a 3.8 my freshman year. I'm in the honors program. I'm holding it together. Sophomore year, I moved into an apartment complex called The Chase, and there was about 60 of the fraternity brothers that lived in this one apartment complex, so there was a party every night. And I stopped going to class. I stopped doing all, the things that I was doing that first year when I was at Virginia Tech, and I went from a 3.8 to a 0.66. And I flunked out of college. So the scholarship I had that was gone. My parents were no longer willing to fund this party that I was having. I'd failed 2 semesters in a row. And so the jig was up, and my family, my parents, my father, decided that it was time for me to come back to New Jersey and transfer schools to Monmouth. The geographical cure. How many people have ever tried the geographical cure? So I come back to New Jersey thinking, it was just that situation. It was the fraternity. It was all those things that were, bad influences, let's say. Turns out I'm the bad influence. And so I get back to New Jersey, and I transfer to Monmouth University. And I'm going to school at Monmouth University, and I move in with a group of people I didn't know, and they had no idea what they were in store for when they took me on as a roommate. And within a month, I was on a run that was so bad that I legitimately couldn't even look at myself in the mirror anymore. It was really my first bottom. For a long time, people had been telling me I had a problem with drinking, but I wasn't even willing to listen to them. I thought it was just, I like to party. Sure, I love alcohol, but alcoholic? No way. And so I was about to fail out of another semester of college. I was about to, lose the support of my family, and the walls were closing in on me, and I was cornered. And at this point, I threw up my hands and I said, okay, I'm willing to go to treatment. It was kind of like my way out, my surrender flag. And it wasn't that I really wanted to go to treatment, but I just didn't see any other way out of the situation that I was in, And so I went to this beautiful treatment center down in Havre de Grace, Maryland, called Father Martin's Ashley. My parents, I'm very blessed that they, sent me to a place that was this great. And when I got there, there was all these doctors with lots of letters after their names, and psychiatrists and psychologists, and they were giving presentations on synapses in the brain and the effect that alcohol has upon you, and they were talking about serotonin levels and dopamine levels, and I was a pretty smart guy, so I'm taking notes and I'm taking it real seriously. I'm paying attention when I'm in this rehab. My parents come for Parents Week at the end, and I remember hugging them and telling them I loved them and telling them that I was sorry and promising them that I was done drinking for good. And I meant it. 100% when I was in that treatment center, you could have hooked me up to a lie detector test and I would have passed with flying colors. I was done, and I was positive that self-knowledge, that all the things that I'd learned when I was in this facility were the answer. And so I took all that self-knowledge, I took all the notes that I had home with me. I didn't take some of the suggestions that they gave, like going to meetings, getting a sponsor, doing steps. But I did, have the plan that I was going to do this on my own. And I'd been pretty good at other things. I'd shown that I had self-control, or that I had determination, willpower in other areas of my life. So I just thought there was no way that I wasn't going to succeed with this. And I lasted 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, I got bored. I talked to some of my friends. They were going out to the bar, and I said, you know what? I'll be the DD. Everyone knew that I was sober, so I made the decision that I was going to be the DD. We got into the bar, and back then you were allowed to smoke in bars in New Jersey, and so it's thick with smoke. And within 30 seconds of being in that bar, the shot girl came up to me and offered me a shot, and I took it without even thinking about the consequences. Instantaneously. And then that night, I was another blackout and another run, and it was this kind of cat and mouse game constantly of trying to hide my drinking, because people in my life no longer supported my habit. They knew what I was, and so I was constantly trying to convince everybody on the outside that I was doing better and trying to figure things out. And so somehow, over the next year and a half after I got out of that first treatment center, I managed to graduate from college. Somehow, I managed to get my degree, and I got this job, this incredible opportunity. So I told you I was pretty smart. So I had a professor that was the manager of a hedge fund, and I was a finance major. And I convinced him to, give me an opportunity to do an internship. That internship turned into a job opportunity, and I was off. And I thought I'd found, my future, my career. I was going to be incredibly rich. And I was going to be a great success, and I was going to kind of figure my life out. Within 2 months of graduating from college, they fired me from that job. I think my grandmother died 3 times because I was calling out every other day, from being hungover or still drunk from the night before, and that chance vanished. And back then, I graduated in 07. 07, 08. Was when I was back on the job market in finance, and everybody knows that wasn't exactly a great time to find a job in finance. So I lose that job, I start spiraling. I was already spiraling, but I spiraled even worse. And so at the end of that summer, the jig was up again, and I decided that it was time to go back to rehab again. So my parents, they put together the money, and they gave me an opportunity to go back to Father Martin's Ashley again. And so I go back to that treatment center, but this time I'm not taking notes. This time I'm a real distraction. I'm very, spiritually sick. I'm causing lots of chaos and fighting with other treatment center patients that were there. I wasn't going to the meetings. I had an iPod. I was getting conjugal visits from my girlfriend, and I was asked to leave. So I was at a treatment center where I was paying $30,000, I think, for the 28 days to be there. My parents were paying $30,000, and they said, you know what, you keep your money. We'd like for you to leave. And so I get asked to leave that treatment center, but I did one thing right. And I agreed when I was coming out of there that I was going to, instead of going back home and moving back into the same situation that I'd always been in, that I was going to go down to Florida and I was going to move into a halfway house down there, trying the geographical cure again. But I got fortunate. I got into one of these halfway houses that was very centered on the steps. And for the very first time in my attempts at being sober, I got exposed to the steps. I got a sponsor. I started working the steps. I did a 4-step. I did a 5th step. I made the amends that I could make in Florida, and I had, the note cards to make the amends back home in New Jersey when I went back. And so I actually, for the first time, was sober and kind of happy at the same time. See, I could never do those things simultaneously. They were always mutually exclusive for me. And so I decided with my family at the time, I had a fiance who was 9 months pregnant, that I was going to come back to New Jersey, I was going to be a father, I was going to get a job with my degree, and I was going to start my life, and I was going to be a father. And so I was going to do all the things in New Jersey that I was doing down in Florida, and I made that promise, and I meant it when I said that. And I come back to New Jersey, and I got a job at a restaurant, and within 3 weeks, that seems to be my number, I'm back in New Jersey, and someone that I work with invited me out for drinks that night. And I said yes. I didn't even think twice about it. And I'm drinking red wine because, I'm classy. So I'm drinking some red wine, and I'm thinking, well, I've never really drank red wine. Maybe wine will be better for me than hard alcohol, Maybe wine will be something that you can't really slug wine. And so I start drinking red wine. We're going out, with some of my other coworkers, and I black out. And I wake up out of this blackout on the side of the road in handcuffs, puking all over myself. And cop car lights are flashing, and somehow this police officer, instead of giving me my second DUI, he called my fiance out of bed in the middle of the night. I think he saw my daughter's car seat in the back of my car. I put the car seat in the back of my car, because it was going to happen any day now. The birth was impending, right? And so I can't even describe to you what that car ride was like. She was not happy with me. And again, now that, everyone's back onto me, they know that I've relapsed. I really can't drink the way I want to drink. I can't even drink the way I don't want to drink, because once I start, I can't stop. And so I'm trying to white knuckle it. I'm trying to get back on the horse, and I think it's like 2 days later. I'm sober, but I'm miserable. And one of the guys that I work with at this restaurant had missed a couple of days of work. He'd been out with kidney stones. So he comes back into work with a screen to see when he passes the kidney stone and a rattler full of painkillers. And I desperately tried to get him to sell me these painkillers, and he wouldn't have it. But he did tell me about the symptoms of kidney stones. And so I had this brilliant idea that no one could get mad at me if I was to fake kidney stones, go to the urgent care on my way home from work that night, and get a script for painkillers. I could get away with that. And so I leave work that night, I go into this urgent care, and I'm telling you, I put on an Academy Award-winning performance for these doctors and nurses. I mean, my legs are flailing in the air, I'm writhing in pain, they're touching me in all the spots that it would hurt if you had kidney stones, and they're convinced there's something wrong with me, but I did not realize that they could test you for kidney stones. And so they test me for kidney stones, and I don't have kidney stones. So they start running this battery of tests on me, and 1 hour passes, 2 hours pass, 3 hours pass. They can't figure out what's wrong with me. They're pumping me full of morphine, and they're running these tests on me, and they call my 9-month pregnant fiance. This is the due date of my daughter. This is the 4th of July, 2008. And my parents to my bedside, and they're holding my hand telling me everything's going to be okay. And I remember thinking, I know. Nothing wrong with me physically, plenty mentally and spiritually, but nothing wrong with me physically at that point in time. And so they come back and they say, listen, we ran the test for appendicitis, It came back inconclusive. We're going to go through with an emergency appendectomy right now. We're going to remove your appendix. And I think they were trying to call my bluff, but I was like, let's do this. So I thought to myself, I'll get a really good script out of this, you know. And so they give me an ambulance ride from the urgent care to the hospital. They call these doctors and nurses out of bed in the middle of the night on the 4th of July, and they perform an emergency appendectomy on me. Now, the next morning, I wake up from the surgery, and they were not so liberal with the morphine. I think once they removed my appendix, they saw that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. And so they gave me a script for 45 milligram Percocets with no refills, and my copay was $2,500. And so that starts one more run for me. And it's bad timing because my daughter's born 2 days later. So 2 days later, my daughter is born, and, you know, it's a difficult delivery. The doctors and nurses, you know, are sort of like, you know, pushing my ex-wife, you know, they're telling everything's going to be okay. And I'm an ex-football player, so I'm like, come on, push. And they're like, hey, bud, why don't you go down there, you know, get lost. So they sent me, you know, to actually see the delivery. And so I'm down there, and I actually see my daughter crown, and I see, you know, her born, and then the nurses are holding her. I get emotional every time I talk about this. The nurses are holding her, and I hear her cry for the first time, and she is absolutely perfect. This little girl is absolutely perfect. Poor kid looks just like me. She's even got my toes. And so they put her in my arms, and the tears are flowing, and I'm like really, really emotional. I look down at this beautiful, perfect little girl, and I promise her from the bottom of my heart that I'm going to stay sober for her. I promise her that I'm going to be the father that she deserves. And I mean it with every fiber in my body. Just like when I got out of those rehabs, you could have hooked me up to a lie detector test, and I meant it. And on the way home from the hospital that night, I stopped at the liquor store. And for the first 4 years of that little girl's life, I was in and out of her life, back and forth to treatment centers and rehabs and detoxes and IOPs. I went to psychologists and psychiatrists. I tried every prescription you could imagine. You know, every antidepressant, every single Campril to control the cravings, and you name it, I did everything. And none of it worked. And I couldn't stay sober. Not for the life of me. And so this last time, I was 28. Tessa was 4 years old. It was 5 days after her fourth birthday when I finally got sober for the last time. And it wasn't my worst run. I wasn't drinking the most that I'd ever drank. You know, I didn't have the most consequences that I'd ever had. I mean, things were bad, don't get me wrong. I don't think I ever got sober on a winning streak or went into rehab when things were going great. So, you know, my family had changed the locks in the house and they'd thrown me out. I didn't have custody of my daughter. I could only see her under supervision. My parents were there. The ex-wife was long gone. But I think the difference between this time and every other time was I wasn't so cocky and confident that I had it this time. Every other time that I'd gotten sober, I was like, I got this, no problem. You know, and this time I really had a healthy amount of respect for this disease. I, you know, failed over and over and over again. I'd gotten 3 months, I'd gotten 6 months, I'd gotten 9 months. You know, I even had a year. I mean, I was on steroids, so it doesn't really count, but I had a year at one point. I collected a 1 year coin on steroids. And so I really, for the first time, I guess, had a full knowledge of just how screwed you are when you're an alcoholic. And I don't think that ever really sank in before. And so I really did feel like maybe I was going to be one of those people who just never got this, who spent their whole life in and out of this program, building things up and tearing them down for their family over and over and over again. And I move into this halfway house, and I talked to the guy that owned the halfway house, and I realized something very strange. I was 28 years old. I'd been in and out of treatment for 7 years. I went to my first AA meeting 10 years earlier than that. I went to my first AA meeting when I was 18 years old. And at 28, I'd never worked the 12 steps to completion. So I spent 10 years in a 12-step program not doing the 12 steps, which I would not recommend if you're new. I could have saved myself a lot of pain if I would have just read the steps off the lampshade and I would have done them at my first meeting. But I've got to be honest with you, I remember sitting in those chairs and at these meetings, and I read the steps off the lampshade, and I remember thinking, what does that have to do with my problems? I'm dead broke, I'm in crippling debt, I can't keep a job, I don't have custody of my daughter, my family wants nothing to do with me. So what are these 12 steps going to do for my problems? How are they going to fix what's going on with me? And so I think there was a lot of reluctance there to do the 12 steps because I didn't see how they would work in my life. I was also raised very religious and Catholic, and I didn't really accept that version of God, or I struggled with it. It didn't really resonate with me. And so once I rejected that idea or that version of God, I thought I'd rejected God entirely. And so I think that idea that the program is spiritual kind of was something that turned me off to it, because I felt sort of leery of the people at the meetings. I didn't believe that people genuinely just wanted to help me. I always thought there was some sort of ulterior motive. I didn't really trust people, and so I spent a lot of time doing the steps that were convenient. Does that sound familiar to anybody? The ones that I was comfortable with, but when it came time to actually do some of the difficult amends, when it came time to actually have a spiritual life and a conscious contact with God with an 11th step, I wasn't really so great at those steps. And so I spent, 14 months at this halfway house. 14 months, and for the first time ever, I just said, you know what? I've seen other people that have come in when I came in the past. They've stayed sober. Their lives seem good. They seem happy. This is the thing that they did that worked, and so I'm just going to try it. What do I have to lose at this point? And so I made a pact with my sponsor and with the men who owned the halfway house that I was at, that I was going to go through the steps to completion this time, for the very first time ever. And so step one was pretty easy for me by this point, And so step one, I have a physical allergy, and I had plenty of evidence to that effect. Once I picked up, I couldn't accurately predict the results. How many times did I pick up saying, I'm just going to have one, I'm just going to have a couple, just tonight, and then I'll get back on the horse tomorrow, and then I'm on a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year run. And so I got that part of the first step. The second part, the mental obsession, I had that one down pat too, because I know for me, once the idea of drinking took hold, no matter what, I was doing it. And so it wouldn't even be like, in the beginning, maybe I was justifying. It talks a lot about that in the big book, right? It talks about, the reasons that we justify our sprees are insanely trivial when we look back, but, maybe I would pick fights with my ex-wife to get out of the house and to go drink, or I would blame it on stress from work or whatever. But at a certain point, after I'd been to enough meetings and I'd seen this enough, I knew what was going to happen. But the pain of being me and being sober at the same time was so uncomfortable, was so unbearable, that I would just say, forget it, I'm not doing this anymore. And I would pick up knowing full well what was going to happen. And so I really think that feeling that I was describing, that sense of dis-ease and discomfort, is the spiritual malady that they talk about. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I guess, when you think about it intellectually, which I think about everything intellectually. But when you straighten out spiritually, the rest, the body and the mind tend to follow. And so I fully worked that first step, came to believe that I was an alcoholic, separate thought that my life had become unmanageable. And both of those things were abundantly clear to me by the age of 28. I was not crushing it at life at that point. And so, no problem. First step, done. Second step, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Now that is something I got hung up on, and I would just say, oh, I'm willing to believe, and I would blow past it. And at times in the past when I was trying to get sober, next step, please, okay, willing to believe I can do that. And it really does start with that, and it grows from there. But I think this time I really needed to have some sort of framework or some sort of understanding of what I thought that higher power was and how it was working in my life. And so I went at it trying to, conceptualize God and stick him in this box. And, 10 years sober, the longer I'm sober, the less I understand and know about my higher power. And I think that's the hard part for me to embrace, was the mystery of it all. It is a mystery. I don't know what God is. I don't know, I do know what he isn't, And I do know when I'm doing this work and when I'm lined up with what I think his will for me is, that my life seems to fall into place. But, at that time, I really tried to conceptualize and get a framework for what my higher power was. And then step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Well, I got my dad's control issues, so that one was very tough for me. And I still, to this day, sometimes will struggle with that one. It's okay, like, God, you can take this, but like finances, relationships, all the, the stuff that you really need to bring God into, it's a constant give and take and push and pull. But my sponsor really simplified it for me, and it helped me to move through this step, and it was really just a pact with him that I was going to go through with the rest of the steps. And I told you before I even did step 1 that I'd made that pact. And so we said the prayer, and I continued to say the prayer. And my understanding and conception of step 3 grows as I continue to stay sober. Step 4, I'd done that. I'd done step 4. I had no problem writing down my resentments. You get a list of people, and I think my 4th step this time around, I had 164 names in resentments. Resentments to me, principles, institutions, people. I had a very long list of resentments, a very thorough 4th step. And so I write down my resentments, and it's easy to get the first 2 columns done. But then when you start talking about the 7 areas of self that it affects, or my part in it, the writing slowed down a little bit. I always like to say, people are like, how long does it take to write a 4th step? I'm like, a couple months and 3 hours, a couple months of procrastination and then a few hours of actual writing, maybe a little bit longer depending on how much stuff you have on there. But this time I was willing, and so I pulled the Band-Aid off and I went to it, and I wrote a very, very thorough, to the best of my ability at that time, 4th step. And I put down my fears, and I put down my conduct in sexual relationships, and I put down my harms done to others, and I got it all down in black and white. And so I think part of just writing the 4th step in it itself is cathartic. Because I have all this stuff that rattles around in my head, these shower arguments I have with myself, these things that are on the top of my mind when I wake up in the morning and they prevent me from being able to go to bed at night. And so just taking it out of here and putting it down on paper feels better. It can be a little bit painful to relive those experiences, a little bit shameful and a little bit, at the time. But I think the process of writing is cathartic. And so it's also easy when it's up in my head to be the good guy. I'm the protagonist of my story. Everything I did was justified. Every person that I took advantage of had it coming. Every time I lashed out at somebody, it was in retaliation for something that they did to me. And so, I'm the hero of my own story until I write it down in black and white and I see the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is very different from what I had, the version of things that I had in my head. I was judging myself by my intentions, and the world judged me by my actions. And my actions were not admirable. And so I share this with another person, a sober man, and I do a 5th step. It's a long talk. It was 8 or 9 hours. I sat down on his couch, and we hammered things out. And someone who's sober, who's been through this, can help me to see the patterns of behavior in my life, to see how I actually showed up. Not how I thought I showed up, but how I actually did show up in those relationships. And so I have all this information. I have the freedom. It says in the big book, we're walking on the broad highway, and I had a very powerful 5th step experience. I don't want to say that I didn't. I absolutely did. And so we moved through that, and the next steps we're on is 6. And you would think after sharing this 5th step and talking about the way that I'd shown up in my life and all the patterns of behavior and the terrible way that I'd been selfish and dishonest and taken advantage of people and manipulated everyone, that I'd be willing to let these things go. But the truth is that these character defects were sort of my way of getting what I wanted out of life. life. You know, I lie because it helps me to present the version of myself that I want other people to see, or mislead them to get what I want out of them. You know, I'm selfish because I think if I don't take care of me, nobody else is going to. And so I have to grab everything that I can get out of this world. And so letting go of these character defects, I always thought they just split up 6 and 7 because they wanted to make it 12 steps. But I really do think that there's something to the willingness, because I've found through my sobriety that I'm just as powerless over these character defects as I am over alcohol. And so until I was willing to bring these things to my higher power, until I was willing to do something about them, until I was willing to really try and fix that behavior, nothing was going to change. And so I do the 7-step prayer with my sponsor. You know, my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. We move through the 7th step, and we're on step 8. And the 8th step is pretty straightforward. The list was already made when I did my 4th step. So I make these note cards, and I go out into the world and I make some of these amends. Now, some were a lot easier than I thought they were going to be. You know, you build it up in your head, and I have all this fear, and I make this mountain where, you know, the worst case scenario happens, the person kicks me out of their life, and they tell me to go screw myself. And I'm not saying that can't happen. That wasn't my experience. Some of the amends were challenging. So obviously, you know, making an amends to my family and telling them the truth about my appendectomy story was interesting, to say the least. The look on their face was just stunned disbelief. And so I make some of these amends, but not all of them, not the most difficult ones, not the ones I don't want to make. You know, I had a friend who I raided his medicine cabinet and broken into his home while he wasn't there. And, you know, that was an amends that I was really reluctant to make because I still had this fear, this deep care for what people thought about me. You know, I told you this was my first drug. And so approval of others was deeply important to me. I mean, I'd spent my entire teenage years and adult life being a chameleon, being whatever version of myself that I thought you wanted me to be to get you to like me. And so I really had a hard time letting go of that and getting rigorously honest and bearing my true self to other people and showing them what I was. But the reception that I got was incredible when I finally made that amends. You know, I dragged my feet on it. It was at the bottom of the list. That's the later. I didn't have any nevers, but I had some laters in the pile that I was shuffling around. And so I finally made that amends and some other, you know, very challenging amends. And the freedom that I got from that, I'll never forget. You know how I was just talking about how when I laid my head down on my pillow at night, I had this constant Rolodex of things running through my head and all these regret and shame and guilt about what had happened in the past. And for the first time in my entire life that I can remember, I laid my head down on my pillow at night and I went to sleep. And it was a miracle. It really was. The 9th step is really where the magic happened for me. That was the step where I'd always done just enough to get by, to get people off my back, to feel like I had done some of that work, but I never got current on all of my amends. And when I finally did that, the feeling was electric in my life. And so I'm a big proponent with people that I sponsor of the 9th step. And I do it in a way that breaks it up and encourages them to continue to stay at it and do a few a week, you know, and makes it something that's more palatable than having to go out into the world and make 50 amends, right? When you're just kind of doing a little bit at a time, when we're working through it, and then there's accountability and they're talking to me about the approaches that they made and how they went. And so I do the 9th step to completion for the very first time. And 10 is just so that I don't have to keep going. So if you do a perfect 10-step, you really don't have to do 4 through 9. Now the problem is nobody does a perfect 10th step, right? There's going to be stuff that piles up. There's going to be things that you miss or resentments that don't, reach that point where you have that emotional response. But I'm a huge, huge proponent of working a thorough 10th step. And so once I feel that spiritual awakening, that spiritual experience, once I get used to being comfortable in my own skin, anything that shakes that, anything that makes me feel even a little bit off, I'm very sensitive to that. And so when something comes up, I'm very good at bringing it to my higher power. But there's a definite list of instructions in the big book about what you should do with the 10 steps. So, I pause when I'm agitated or doubtful, right? And another line that I love in the big book is continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And then it says when these crop up, not if. Because it's not like you get through these steps and you have this spiritual experience and then everything is rainbows and lollipops. Life happens, resentments crop up, fears crop up. But I have a definite solution when that happens. And I'm telling you, the 10th step works wonders when you do it thoroughly. And so I pause when I'm agitated or doubtful. I bring it into prayer and meditation. I reach out to someone in my network, usually my sponsor. I talk to them about what's going on. If there's an amends due, I make it immediately. I don't wait. I don't hesitate. I do it as quickly as absolutely possible. And then I turn my attention to somebody that I can help. And it's a formula that absolutely works. And I'm telling you, when normal people get approached by you, when you do an amends, like almost in the moment in real time, and you own your side of the street, and you do a proper amends, you ask those 3 questions, people are taken back. They're not used to people having that level of accountability. It's a really, really great way to live your life. Instead of making excuses for your behavior or constantly trying to shirk from your responsibilities, you own it. And when you live like that, when you have integrity, when you're a man of your word or a woman of your word, people tend to trust you, And you can hold your head high and you don't have to keep track of all the lies that you've been telling in your life. And you can lay your head down on your pillow at night and you can go to sleep in peace. And so the 10th step is powerful, and a lot of people confuse the nightly review with the 10th step, but it's actually part of the 11th step. And so you do your nightly review, trying to do it without beating yourself up, right? I know for me, the first time I started trying to do a nightly review, I fell into this pattern of beating myself up for where I fell short and nitpicking my behavior and not accepting anything less than perfection. And I needed to find a way to reframe that and to accept myself as human, but at the same time, still take a look at my behavior and still stay accountable to a sponsor and to a network. And so, this 11th step has been huge for me in my life. So prayer meditation is something where it was like, oh, you got to wait till 11 to get on prayer and meditation. And that's not true at all. When I get a sponsee, I get them praying and meditating right from the jump. And I found that meditation and prayer can give me that same relief that I got from alcohol. Getting quiet and letting my mind settle down, getting present, and there's no wrong way to meditate. I always tell people that. You just got to find what resonates with you, what works for you. Drive with the music on, or go for a walk, or I like to do guided meditations. They're constantly reminding me that I'm meditating because my mind will wander. And so you just find something that works for you, that helps you to get quiet and get centered and get present. Because this right here, this moment right here is where life is unfolding. See, my mind wants to take me to the past and live in regret and shame and guilt about what happened back then, or I want to live in fear and anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. But where life is actually happening is here in the present moment, and what meditation has helped me to do is to retrain my brain to be present. And so once you work out that muscle, and once you learn how to meditate properly, meditation can give me that same instantaneous relief that I used to get with alcohol. And so I love teaching new people how to meditate and to use it as a tool so that they can, start to incorporate it into their lives and grow their spiritual life. And so we move into probably the most important step, right? The step that brings me here today, which is the 12th step. And so you guys heard my story. I didn't go through all the horrors of what my addiction and my alcoholism was like, but you get the general gist. And so I'm sitting here today, and I have this unbelievable life. I have full custody of my daughter. I have my own business. I have all these friends and all this incredible, things that are happening on the outside. But more importantly, what's happening on the inside is that I'm content and I love myself today. And that's what this whole thing is about. My father, the one who I had that contentious relationship with, my father gave me the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. And he told me last year, he said, your life changed when you stopped chasing instantaneous happiness and when you started doing things in your life that bring purpose and meaning into your life. And when you have a life that's filled with purpose and meaning, it can look daunting. If you look at my to-do list every day, there's a lot of stuff on there, But once I started to be a man of integrity, to be a man of my word, to follow through, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it today, 100% of the time. You can bet on it. And once I started to live like that, everything else in my life fell into place. And so I have all these amazing gifts happening in my life, and I have this incredible relationship with my daughter. And it would be criminal for me to not pass on what had been given to me, to not go and try and help other people, to not speak at H&I commitments, or say yes when someone asked me to come speak in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, or to say no when someone asked me to sponsor them. And so one of the bright spots of my life is working with other addicts and alcoholics, and to help them to, basically find this, at least to bring that message to them. And when you see someone get sober, and when you see the lights come on, it's absolutely life-changing. Every time it happens, I always know when someone I'm sponsoring is doing better when they reach out to me and they start asking me about other people, how they can help a sponsee that they're working with. And as soon as I hear them say that, I know something's changed. I know they're on the right path and that they're going to be okay. And getting that phone call, the feeling that it gives is indescribable. And so that's why I call the meeting that I started in my living room a way out, because this really is a way out of hell, the hell of addiction and alcoholism. And so, if you guys got anything from this talk, I would encourage you, if you're someone like me who's been in and out of these rooms, who can't seem to get this, who's tired of burning their life to the ground over and over and over again, I would encourage you to do the 12 steps. And that's all I got.
Incredible stuff. Once again, my name's Brian. I'm an alcoholic. A couple quick announcements and we'll get out of here. Again, the Food and the Fellowship for this group starts every week at 8 o'clock. Feel free to show up early. If you want to get involved with this group, there's always a lot of moving parts to keep things going and set up for the meeting. So if you want to do some service work, help out, we appreciate it. More importantly, get here early, hang out. There's always a meeting after the meeting. If you want to help us out with some service work, we're going to have to put away these chairs. We'll put away these chairs in the front, and the ones along the sides, the ones on the tables back there will stay right where they are. Thank you to everybody for helping out with this group. Thanks to our greeters. Thanks to everybody that read. But more importantly, let's thank our speaker one more time, Matt. It is customary for us to thank our speaker, so usually we form a line in the front here and we thank our speakers personally. But if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing.